All right, welcome to rdbx.gg, to RDBX Rob Live. Today I'm going to cover the basic Markdown. So it's a little bit of a boost to get you going on how to write Markdown, specifically basic Markdown. We won't be going over, clapping your hands, we won't be going over how to make Markdown like in general. We're just going to, all the different Markdowns, we're just going to dive right into basic Markdown. There is another video about all of the Markdowns, what is Markdown, why you should use it, and why I think it's the most important, frankly, the most important language you'll ever learn to write, because it's the most sustainable long-term language to capture all of your knowledge. And so yeah, so that is a that'll come. So today, for right now, we're just going to do basic Markdown. What does that mean? Okay, so goodbye fish for now. CD back into the README directory. So if you want to follow along, rwx.gg/lang/md/basic. There is a shortcut for that. I don't remember it right now. But that will get you to the README file. I'm going to be working in the terminal, so the content you'll see me using is actual basic Markdown. It's actually Pandoc Markdown. That's why you see this YAML stuff up here. We'll cover that in a different video. And I'm using a couple little conveniences of Pandoc, such as links that don't need actual links in them, something like that. So, but this, as you can see right off the bat, Markdown is readable. It's readable as text. You're like, well, what's going on with these ones and everything? Well, never fear. We're going to cover all of that, and I'll justify why I think you should do it that way. All right, so let's scroll down. First of all, when you write Markdown, everything is a block. And so just remember that pretty much everything we talk about that's block-ish, paragraphs and things like that, you always have to have a blank line between. And I'm mentioning this now because I've taught this before, and people forget this and they cram everything together like this. And no, just no, it doesn't work. My syntax hider doesn't like it, all that stuff. All right. By the way, we'll talk about how to get your Vim to show these really pretty colors. I extended the Vim Pandoc plugin so that it actually does things like smart quotes and stuff like that. I'll talk about that in a separate boost for you to use that. Okay, so paragraphs. Just use original. No, do not, under any circumstances, use the original Markdown that John Gruber described. That is bad advice. That is really bad advice, and I'm glad somebody out there had the guts to say that. There are so many things wrong with the original Markdown that it would take me a full hour just to document all of the problems with the original Markdown. By the way, if you actually want to look up all of those problems, go search for something called GitHub and GitLab are not standard Markdown. Okay, so I'm glad you guys are bringing this up because these are really, really common misconceptions. So, for example, so first of all, if you want to read about why that is, you can of course read this material. I'll talk about it, and I've actually tried to put little call outs every time there's a specific question about that, and there's an FAQ at the bottom. But the fundamental reason that you want to use basic Markdown is because two reasons, really. You want to eliminate the possible problems that exist in the basic Markdown and every other flavor of Markdown that has come up since then, including GitHub. GitHub has, in many ways, destroyed Markdown by adding things that suck. and making changes, particularly the underscores. There's a couple things they did that were really valuable that we'll go forward and show you. And the second reason that you want to use a basic Markdown is for compatibility and consistency. And I cannot stress this enough. If you try to go search for, the first hit that'll come up from any common Markdown or Markdown tutorial will be full of, well, you can do it this way or 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 this way. Don't do that. Just don't do that. You'll get so much cognitive overhead. You'll never remember it right. You'll end up doing something that you think is supported everywhere and it's not. And you'll get surprised because Discord won't do it that way, or because Reddit does it a different way, or because I'm telling you, I've been writing in Markdown for more than 8 years, and the experience that I've had over that time, finding all of the incompatibilities and inconsistencies, have caused me to make this guide, because this is the least amount of cognitive overhead, the least amount of trouble you have to go through, and it has the most consistency. And I'm going to make a case for consistency before I get into this. I'll be repeating references to this stuff later throughout the whole syntax thing, but you want consistency. So the original Markdown allowed you to literally display a horizontal rule using any number of infinite styles. Don't do that. Settle on one. If maybe you don't like my 4 dashes, fine. Whatever you do, settle on one. Why? Because then when you shell script it, for example, like this, for example, there's like 2 different ways to do headers. But if you actually did it decently, you can actually grep all the headers out of your page by just doing a simple grep like that. See all those headers? There's all the headers. All right. Now, if I had used ATX headers, which we'll talk about later, I couldn't do that. Why? Because it's inconsistent. You don't want 10 ways to do a header. You want an infinite number of ways to do a code block. And not just so that you can find them through your code, so that your code gets simpler, so other people can code to it. And if you're interested in that, I'm actually writing a Peg Pandoc Lite parser using pest.rs in Rust. And if you want to watch that, I'll be doing that on stream. I am codifying Pandoc Lite, which is basic Markdown plus a little bit more. I cannot advocate for you to use this more because it's so important. All right, so here we go. We're gonna go ahead and show you why. I'll be talking about consistency as we go through, but I just really want to make. There are lots and lots of Markdown editors. We will not be talking on Markdown editors today. The only Markdown editor I officially recommend is Vim with. But there are a lot of other editors out there. Any of the editors, by the way, that are out there, almost all of them will support basic Markdown. So you just have to, but they'll also let you do other things. So, for example, one of the most deadly things that a Markdown editor will do is do auto numbering of ordered lists, and we're going to get to that. Don't do it, because then when somebody else goes to edit your document, they're going to have the horrible task of renumbering that list rather than just renumbering it automatically. Okay, so let's keep going. So I'm going to jump back here, but I think I'm glad you guys asked those questions, because so many people think, oh, this is easy, no problem here. And there's actually a lot of problems. And you know what? You might not think it's a big deal, but anybody who's been watching me on my over the shoulder streams, like, you know, will notice that I spend a significant amount of time editing Markdown. And if you do not have a consistent, you're going to end up with thousands and thousands of lines of knowledge source over time in a knowledge base. And if you do not arrive at a consistent format early on in the process, you will want to shoot yourself later. So I've gone through the experience on this so much, I cannot tell you how strongly I feel about this. Okay, so and let's keep going. Typora is awesome. We'll talk about the tools. We're not gonna talk about tools here. And by the way, I noticed that a lot of you are like jumping for the tool. Where's the tool? Where's the tool? Tools are what got us into this mess. Okay, so don't think about your knowledge as, well, what tools are out there. Think of the knowledge based on what is the most sustainable format and what is the most sustainable syntax for my knowledge, and then start looking for tools. Don't go looking for the tools first. That's what got us into this internet problem in the first place. That's what caused the browser wars of the 90s, because somebody decided to extend HTML and do it a different way, the same way we see people extending Markdown. Just agree on a format. Your best editor right now is Notepad, for God's sake. If you're on Windows, stick with something simple for now. Do not trust the tools. Learn the format. This is the most important language you're ever going to learn, so learn it now. And it takes only about 20 minutes if you don't have Mr. Rob like ranting in front of you. It really only takes about 20 minutes. Yeah, use Nano, use Vim, use whatever. Just don't think about editors right now. I promise you we'll cover editors, but I want to make sure you get the format down first. All right, so let's do this. Let's open up, let's see, lang, I got rid of it, MD, so rdbx.gg/lang/MD if you want to go follow along. and then I'll be opening the readme.md file. Okay, so first things first, Markdown paragraphs. I have to kind of regroup here. Oops, open the wrong one. So that's the main. That's the one about Markdown in general. Basic is one of 3 Markdowns that I document on here. One Basic, Common, and Pandoc Lite. There's Pandoc Lite and there's Pandoc Full, and I'll probably refer to Pandoc Full for the editors out there. Ed is a great editor. You can use Ed to make Markdown if you want. So Lang, MD, and then Basic. Okay. So people laugh about Ed. It's actually a very valid editor for pen testing right now still, when you don't have a VI full terminal. So anyway, paragraphs. A paragraph is just a big long single line of text followed by a blank. To move around the paragraphs, you just have to copy. So this is why I have to tell you something. This is one that I actually changed on. I was writing in Markdown, you know, probably 10 years ago when it first came out. And back then I would have done this. You guys know what this is, right? So back in the old days, this is what I would have done. See this? See how all the lines are wrapped? They're all on an individual line. Well, what happens when you start using a pane? Ooh, you see what just happened there? Not pretty, right? Not pretty. So the modern way to do this, all modern editors will, you know, don't have any problem making it into one big long line. I'm using capital J to join all those. And I mean, I could have done it another way, but so then you get wrapping that works. Okay, so just use a big, long, blank line. And not only that, but watch how easy it is to move stuff around, right? I don't have to do section selects. I can just DD on VI. It's just so much easier. So make your paragraphs one big line and then put, you know, of course, the blank spaces around there. All right. It's funny, longtime advocate for 80 character lines. Linus Torvalds actually changed his mind on that. You can follow the link on that. That was relatively recently, like within the last week or two. Yeah, so it's pretty interesting. He's like, no, it's modern terminals. You can use a lot more. So here's, I wrote a little example of wrapping here just to show you what I just showed you already. Okay, so formatting. You probably already saw this, but so 1 star for italics, okay? 2 stars for bold. 3 stars for bold italics. That's it. Now, you guys will probably know you can use underscores and all kinds of shit. Don't use underscores. I cannot emphasize enough how screwed up underscores will be, because you'll go to emphasize something and it will have an underscore in the title somewhere and it will screw it up. All right. It's very rare to have a star in something. So and this is actually such a big problem that GitHub decided to change the behavior of underscores in one particular case if it doesn't have spaces around it, which is not Markdown. That's not the standard. So there's like so many different implementations of it because underscores are so problematic. Just drop them completely. There's no formatting tool that needs them or requires them. So just use the star. Yeah, but Discord does. Yes. So that's another example. Okay, so we have the 3, so just 1, 2, and 3 stars. Not hard to remember, right? Easy to find. And again, because these stars are inside of paragraphs and stuff, you don't have a risk of mixing them up with list items, which we'll talk about in a bit. People ask, well, what's up with the stars for line items too? Okay, backticks. Backticks for monospaced, sometimes called code or pre-formatted. This is really cool. When it gets implemented, it actually shows you what it in HTML. Another thing that's really great about Pandoc, about Basic Markdown and Pandoc, is that it doesn't depend on HTML. Okay, so what about underscores? There is me big talk about underscores. I'm going to skip that. Headings. Okay, this is one of those cases where you have 2 options. I showed that already, but just use 1 hashtag for level 1, 2 for level 2, so on. Really think about how you're managing your knowledge if you have more than 3 or 4 level of heading. Usually, if you've got a document with that many headers, in my opinion, you should be breaking that down and factoring it into separate knowledge nodes that are of a more finite size so they can be aggregated later. That's a part of a much larger discussion about the README World Exchange. I won't get into it here, but almost always, if you have more than 3 or 4 headers, you have too much stuff in a single thing. So this is something we're going to get to later. I'm going to show you how I don't believe in using more than okay, so this is hard to explain. Just there should only be one level 1 header in any document, and that's an SEO thing. People violate that all the time, but just if you do that one thing, that will force you to, you know, keep your knowledge concise and factored properly, so that you don't have this big massive document. I mean, unless you want a big massive document. The thing about factoring your knowledge out into smaller pieces is that you can later patch them together in whatever way you want. You can aggregate them just like source code, and you don't, you know, so if you want a book with certain chapters, you can do that. If you decide on one massive document that has particular, you know, titles and stuff like that, then you can't break it up, you know. So let me just say that. So here we go. This is a little sneak peek here. These things are Pandoc callouts, which I will not talk about right now, but as we keep going forward, they're pretty dang cool. Links and hyperlinks. Okay, so there's 3 forms of links and hyperlinks. I kind of categorize them. You have words, you have URLs, and you have images. So words. Hyperlinking words is pretty easy. All you do is you just wrap the words in like this, in brackets, and with an immediate parenthesis pair, you put the link inside. And that's just an HTTP web link. It can be a local link as it is here. It can be a long link like it is here. You get the point. Auto-linked URLs. Okay, so auto-linked URLs, according to the original Markdown specification, which you can't even call a specification. John Gruber wouldn't even get involved in the specification because he's like, guys, you guys are freaking out. So angle brackets, otherwise known as, you know, less than and greater than, around full URLs or anything you want linked. Never omit the angle brackets. I don't care if GitLab says or GitHub says you can omit them. Never omit the angle brackets. Just don't, because there's so many things that don't support them. Plus there are situations where you want to link like a mail to or a phone or something like that, and those things have to have angle brackets anyway. Just put angle brackets around it. Your syntax highlighter will be happy. Everybody will be happy. You won't ever be disappointed. Okay, those are called pointy boys. Is that what you call them? That's like angle brackets was a new one for me. I learned that about 2 years ago. Okay, so images. We're getting to image links, by the way. Image links are the most complicated thing in all of Basic Markdown. This is an image. So an image is a link. Just, you know, surround the except for having link text here. In fact, you can test this. If you remove the exclamation point at the front, you can check your links to see if they work, because the text that is in here will actually also, if you click on it, it will link to the picture and the picture will open up. So if you were going to link to a picture, you could do that. But if you put the exclamation point in front, that says embed it, which makes it, instead of making it a link to the thing, it actually includes the picture right there. I'm trying really hard to avoid HTML terminology, because one of the best things about Basic Markdown and Pandoc Markdown is that it is not web specific. And I cannot emphasize that enough. You can actually write an entire textbook that's using Markdown, and these links and image embeds and stuff will be rendered in LaTeX or whatever, rather than HTML. So the wise people on the Pandoc project decided to remove the HTML-centric nature and focus of the original Markdown, which was a Perl script to, you know, convert this into HTML. And in order to make Pandoc, which is, you know, the world's most universal document converter. And so Basic Markdown and Pandoc Lite Markdown and all the Pandoc Markdown are not HTML dependent. Okay, so here we go. So here's actually one that's referencing an image. As you notice here, I left out the content of the stuff between the brackets. That's because this image doesn't have particular significance. So it doesn't need alt text. If you know anything about HTML, but anything really, alt text is the text that appears when you hover over the picture or directly underneath the picture if it's a figure, and it will, you know, give an explanation about what that is if you're using a text-based browser, or if you're blind and you need, you know, you want Reddit to you what that thing is. Never omit your alt text unless it is truly an image that has no bearing on the content value. It's really important that you do that for accessibility. If you don't, you know, you're a bad person because you're making content that can't be viewed by people who have visual handicaps, and that's just not cool. So, You might even get sued for it, like Pizza Hut. So here we go. If you want to actually link one of these things, and you can see that this is a link if you break it up into its pieces. So here we go. We have images are just links with an exclamation point in front. Yes. So, and linked images are just images with links around them. So I know it's hard to see. As I said, this is the most complicated syntax you'll ever see in Basic Markdown. It has a bracket, and you can actually see here, if I help out a little bit, you can see that this stuff inside of here is just an image, right? But the image is surrounded by a link. Okay, and that makes you have a link. Now in this particular case, here's the one you should probably look at. This is an actual example of it. This is me using a link, and then I also have put an attribute, which is a Pandoc thing, which is one of the most amazing things that Pandoc introduced. It's now a submission for the Common Mark standards. Thank God, it's so cool. We'll talk about that during Pandoc Lite. If you want to see what these callouts are and these attributes are, those are two of the very specific things in Pandoc Lite that I'll talk about in a separate video. All right, so here we have another list. Okay, so lists in general, save yourself some time. What's the image about the image size? Image size is inferred. This is there's no way to put the image size in there. If you want to put the image size in there and you care, first of all, image size is a very HTML specific thing. If you do want to provide the size for the images, you can do it with Pandoc Lite and Pandoc Full Markdown by adding an attribute. So you can add an attribute that specifies the size if you wish to do so. So that's a good question. I'm glad you asked that. But that is not this properly escape entities. Yes. In fact, we're jumping ahead again with Pandoc Lite. You can escape anything with a backtick. And in fact, everything that needs to be escaped with a backtick, Pandoc adds that. Pandoc and Common Mark both standardized on that because it is a disastrous fail in Markdown because it's not standardized about how you escape things, right? And you can always put HTML into a Markdown file, but you never, ever should. In fact, doing so is such a bad idea. You almost always do not need to put HTML inside of your Markdown file, particularly styles. Styles have no business being anywhere inside a Markdown file because they can easily be linked in and be in a separate file. There is an edge case where you might want to embed view components or something like that. But I'm going to make a strong case for separating your applications, your web applications, which are awesome, from your knowledge. If you start integrating your knowledge and your applications, you end up with JSX, which is a horrible disaster. It's ruined our World Wide Web. And in fact, there's all kinds of people on big sites, Wired Magazine, everything, that are now writing about, well, maybe React's not as good as we should have thought for the web. You know, despite all of the problem, they're starting. It's funny because it's the same kind of tone that these people are writing about who started to question CoffeeScript before it got completely abandoned. So what's happening is when people put HTML inside of their knowledge, they permanently marry the knowledge to HTML forever. And JSX and React is even worse because, you know, it's worse because you cannot separate the knowledge from the application anymore. And now you're forever dependent on a particular technology. And we know about web technologies, how long they live, right? So what I'm trying to tell you is the best part about Basic Markdown and Pandoc Markdown is that it is not specifically tied to any rendering format. And it's so important that you think about your knowledge that way because you don't want to create a knowledge base that's specific. I mean, think about Gutenberg project. What if it had done the same thing? You don't want those dependencies. You want to stay as independent as possible. However, if you know, I've done this before, particularly in education, if you know that your Markdown is going to be okay to have an HTML component in it because it's going to be, you know, maybe there's a view component. This is why I love Vue, by the way. The reason I love Vue so much is because it's progressive. So I can add a component to my Markdown page that is not dependent on, you know, the content is not dependent on the little widget, right? The widget is an extra. It's an extra. There's like a picture of the table, or there, for example, maybe I have a table full of values, right? And so I progressively add on a ViewPress widget or even a straight up JavaScript widget. And I can even write the HTML in Markdown because that's allowed, but everybody knows that won't be rendered when it goes to a textbook, and it won't be rendered when it goes over here to a PDF, but it will allow some interactivity in the HTML rendering of it that does not affect the content. And that's really important. And even when you look at images, you should never depend on an image for the full communication if you can help it, because you have people that are going to be consuming your content who cannot read because they can't look at your images. So think about your knowledge that you're putting out there. And I know I'm kind of triggered on this topic because I feel so strongly about it. We are ruining our World Wide Web with stuff that people cannot consume because we're not thinking about all the possible ways that content might be consumed in the future. And so let me keep going. So lists, put a thumbtack in that little rant and let's go more forward. So lists. All right. So lists, let's look at lists here. So, again, consistency. So what do we got with consistency about lists? There are so many ways to do lists. And this is one of the things I will say, the indulgences I allow myself to do when I'm making Pandoc content, which would mean this. So just use stars. Okay. So, and frankly, you should really ask yourself, do I want, a list out here, my list getting kind of hairy out here, right? So I do want to say that, I've actually thought about changing this particular section because I'm so on the fence on this particular point. So the way lists work, the full lists work, is that you can have like a single one, and you can use stars. I might even change it right now. Use, well, no, I'm not. I'm not going to change it. Okay. So, and this is why, because consistency. Okay. So this is basic Markdown. And the reason I even have it as a single level is because blogging platforms like Medium don't even let you have more than one level of list. And if you follow these I used to blog on Medium. I don't anymore because of the paywall. But when I used to blog on Medium, I could literally go to any web browser and copy and paste my whole page with a mouse and paste it into Medium, and it just worked. Why? Because I didn't go for more than one level of outline list, one level of list like this. It worked, right? So again, basic Markdown puts compatibility above everything else. And so that means, stick with stars for your lists. Try to keep yourself down to one bulleted list. You can usually communicate the same thing by breaking out your list into two parts and having two, first level lists. However, you see, when you start writing, larger content, you're going to want to have outlines and things like that. And so that's going to kind of creep in there, and encourage you to watch the Pandoc Lite, where I talk about that, where, at that point it's kind of time to allow yourself more flexibility, because as soon as you bite off on Pandoc, you're already writing off Medium and everything else because you're using things that aren't supported there, but you're doing it for a greater good, which is you're going to be making books and, Kindle and EPUB and, knowledge apps that are, searchable. So anyway, that's my feeling on that. Let's go down to lists again. Using the number lists, just use one dot for this. One dot is the original. It's the only one supported by the original Markdown. There's lots of variations on this. Pandoc has this is one area where I have a really hard time because Pandoc has got an infinite number of expressing these. If you're a restructured text fan, by the way, they also allow pound signs. Pandoc Lite allows pound signs, so just keep that in mind. In fact, as I've been going through it, it's kind of a plug for the Pandoc Lite video that's to come. There are a lot of things that Pandoc has added that are specifically to support restructured text. You can almost translate verbatim a restructured document into Pandoc Markdown. Almost. There's a few things you have to change. So if you've done that. All right. So then we have the reason that you want to use one dot instead of 1, 2, 3, 4 is this. All of a sudden, what if JavaScript is the most important? Right? I didn't have to just do a bunch of renumbering. I didn't have to write a Vim filter to renumber it. I didn't have to use an editor that uses that. I can still manage the whole thing. Now, I still might have to count them, in which case I can just send them to WC and count how many I have. I have 5 of them. Okay. You see that, by the way? WC. I use a VI exclamation point a magic wand to count those by sending those lines to WC and counting them. So if counting is a problem for you because you have a lot of them, you can, you know, always do something like that. All right, separators. Now this is they're also called horizontal rules, context separators. There's lots of them. I personally think that 3 dashes is the way to do this. I'm sorry, 4 dashes. Why 4 dashes? 4 dashes because up here, 3 dashes is the YML standard that has been so stable it hasn't changed in almost 10 years. And they are not changing that. So 3 dashes, by the way, 3 dashes are for YAML text. It always has to appear at the top, of course, but there's nothing that says YAML sections can't appear anywhere in the document. And in fact, Pandoc allows you to mix your YAML throughout your Markdown document. And that is why you do not want to mess with the horizontal rule dashes and just stick with those. It is also true that you can have stars and you can squiggles. You can do all kinds of things for separators. Just don't. Why would you ever do that? You can't. You see how I just found mine by searching for 4 dashes? If you're not consistent, you're going to have all kinds of things you're going to have to search for. You let alone like keep them, you know, grep them out or something like that. So just stick with 4 dashes. You'll be happy. That's a little more. I mean, there is an argument to be made to not use dashes at all, and I have toyed with that idea because I know. But the problem is that I think Reddit, I can't remember which one it is, it's Reddit or Slack, but one of the tools out there only allows dashes to be used for line separators. I can't remember which one it is, I'll have to go look it up. But so that was why I kept the dashes. Otherwise, I would, you know, in order to make it so distinct, I would go with something else. But I don't want to go with dots because, you know, dots, I've thought about doing like with a space between, but then there's systems that don't like that. Just so, I don't know, the thing I put in all throughout my knowledge base is 4 dashes. And I suggest that if anybody has another idea, yes, 3 dashes is YAML, 4 dashes is HR. That is my current recommendation for basic, until I come up with a better one. And I haven't, no one, I'm open to input on that particular point. 4 dashes for consistency, hard returns. So hard returns are really, really controversial. Well, the reason that I wouldn't lose three of those, because I'm more student doctor. The problem is that three stars, 3 stars is almost always going to be a list, right? You're gonna find 3 stars all throughout because you're gonna have emphasis plus, you know, so bold, italic kind of stuff. So I don't like stars for that kind of thing. But if you guys have any more suggestions, I mean, 3 underscores, maybe that's the thing. I think 3 underscores would conflict with all the underscore formatting problems that are already going on. But I'm open to suggestions. If you guys can make the case, we can look at all the different tools that I've looked at. Let's go back to hard returns. So 4 underscores, yeah. So Markdown allows for. This is a super duper controversial thing. There's some people who hate this because you can't search for it reliably. But at the end of a line, if there is more than 1 space, it will automatically hard break. And the HTML equivalent is BR, right? So this is like me simulating it by showing it. And this is what it looks like when it's rendered with an obfuscator. Yeah. So anyway, there you go. Vim plugin shows you where those are. I really suggest this is a case where I really think you do need an editor that will show you that, because not seeing that you have a hard break can be annoying. There have been people who have pitched for this, which is course encoding. And it's been really shot down because it really messes up the readability, which is a big emphasis of the original Markdown. It was really, really a big deal that the source code, the source knowledge code, could be readable as well. In fact, some people, that's why setx headers are a thing that lets you put underlines, because it's and because they wanted it to be readable. So anyway. Put spaces between paragraphs. You could, but the problem here is that if you did that, that would make 2 solid paragraphs instead of 1 paragraph with a line break in it. And this kind of thing, roses are red, that kind of stuff, it makes sense to do that, addresses and thing. All right, so let's keep going. The Vim Pandoc plugin we talked about. Ligatures, that's what these things are, where it combines different things to show it to you. Let's not talk about BRBR. Yeah. So, all right, there we go. A little bit more. So blocks in the traditional sense. Now you're going to see some really weird stuff here because I'm showing you the Markdown. Please don't get, scared. I'm going to talk about what this Markdown stuff is here pretty soon. You can probably already guess that it's the extremely rare case where you have to have Markdown that contains Markdown code. And so I allow that exception in my personal approach to this because there's no other way to do it. So, but normally Discord uses this. Everybody uses this. 3 backticks, not 4, not 5, not 2, excepting that thou proceedest to 3. 5 is right out, right? So 3 backticks, and you could. That's not an original joke, by the way. So, so there you go, and so this creates exactly what we had before, except for it kind of indents it. It puts it as a pre-formatted code block. But now this is where we have to give holy backticks. Yes, we have to give. This is where we have to give credit to GitHub. GitHub invented code fences. And rightfully so. It was GitHub, right? So the whole idea of creating contextual syntax in Markdown came from GitHub. 100%, all them, as far as I know. And so I bag on them a lot, but they really deserve credit for that because that's really revolutionary. So they put 3 backticks and then they some sort of language identifier right here, which has to be immediately following. There's no space, and there's massive disagreement about that across the board. And Pandoc and Common Mark both decided that you cannot have a space. It must be the immediate first keyword after that to identify what the syntax of the language is, and then you can set your renderer however you want. There's LaTeX renderers and stuff, and people have written books using this method now so that they can syntax highlight. Now that we support color in our books, I don't. I use black and white for everything, but there are a lot of people who do support color in books these days for an affordable price. So that's one way to do that. So yeah, and I noted here about syntax highlighting. I disable syntax highlighting because for educational applications, Blackboardy kind of things, possibly printing out on paper, there's like half of the world still doesn't have internet access. And guess what? They still use paper. So my knowledge is not dependent on color. Because I want my knowledge to be somebody who can print it off, take it to their classroom wherever they are, and be able to still learn to code, even if they're not in a world, that in a country that has, or an area that has that. So, I mean, just reconsider your syntax highlighting. I know it's pretty and everything, but just don't assume people can read it. There are people who have colorblindness. My stepson has colorblindness. Half of the syntax styles that people pick, if you pick a color for your syntax highlighting, make sure that you give your users the ability to change it, because there are so many people with color issues who cannot see anything but black and white, and you cannot possibly anticipate every one of them. So I'm going to make a huge plug for this. This is a rampant thing on the internet. There are code samples in tiny little fonts that have massively weird different color schemes that the author liked, that are directly against the original intent of the creators of the World Wide Web, who said everybody gets the same color because everybody can't be guaranteed to see the same colors. And so in a reader mode kind of situation, you really want to think about making your knowledge sources if you're writing something for a reader of some kind, an electronic reader of some kind that doesn't have color support, that the person can control. And if you put syntax color in there, please provide at least 3 different ways for people to either turn off your syntax colors or for them to be able to see the different ones and to switch back and forth between them. Because if you don't, you're going to be shutting your content out to a particular group of people. And that's just not cool. It's just not cool. So yeah, org mode is a disaster. You shouldn't use that, nor should you use Emacs. for reasons that I'll talk about in another thing. If you want to read about it, go to rwx.gg/stupid/Emacs and you can read about that. I love Emacs, just not for most people. Okay, so here we go. Although there are other ways to write blocks. Okay, so this is a table, by the way. This little thing here is a pandoc table. This is not included in Basic Markdown, but I want to show you how easy tables are. We'll get back to that when we get to that. So let's see. Okay, so I did write a little bit about the exception for Markdown here. So an org rant on streaming. So tilde Markdown and 4 tildes Markdown. This is, I hate that this is unclean. It feels like a hack to me. I wish there was a way to do this. But very frequently you will be writing code, Markdown code about Markdown code. You'll even be writing Markdown code about Markdown code about Markdown code, which is what I'm doing right now. In which case you have that extremely rare situation where you have to have, you know, something that actually does like this and allows it to be viewed. It's worth noting that code fences in Markdown are allowed to be tildes. I think that's allowed in Common Mark and GitHub as well. But I just backticks, the tildes are not supported in Discord as far as I know, and I don't believe Reddit supports them. So you know, the 3 backticks. I think Common Mark supports tildes. Does anybody know out there? I probably should research that, but I think it does. But I do know that the few times that you need to have Markdown inside of Markdown that's really the only exception. And then you can just happily search out everything with 3 backticks. And let me just tell you, I'm going to make another solid case for consistency here. Okay, so let me just show you one. Okay, so if I were going to just grep out all of the headers out of here, and this is, so you know, this is, I want the Markdown that I use to be easy enough to use with basic tools, not some elaborate parser. Okay, so here are all of the lines that begin with, you know, hashtag. And as you can see, there's the headers, there's the regular ones. But beyond that, oops, I can't type today. So beyond that, you're gonna see that there are some headers that should not be there. And why are they there? Well, they're there because they are included inside of a code fence. Okay. In fact, let me just show you. I'll just test you one. If I were to, that's not a comment for that kind of thing, but you know, if it were, how about this? Here's some Markdown. I'll fix this one later. But, you know, actually, let's do another grep for here. So see what it did? It actually returned, here is some Markdown as one of the leading, you know, items in there, and it didn't block it. Well, if you've been fancy with your code fences, then you have to write a rather elaborate parser to decide that you are inside of a code fence. Yeah. So my point is this: if you stick with 3 dashes, it's very easy. It's maybe 3 lines of shell script to say, am I inside a code fence or not? And that's, you know, something called state in a parser. In code fence, you know, it says, if I have a starting with a hashtag and not in code fence, print it out. That's a really easy thing to write in shell even, right? So you don't have to have an elaborate language to do the parsing. If you don't stick with 3 backticks for your code fence, or these other particular ones. In my case, actually, the one that I actually use, I search for, I activate a code fence state if I have 3 backticks, or if I have 3 tildes, or if I have 4 tildes. So that's hard, but it's still not nearly as complicated as allowing any infinite number of either backticks or tildes. And so that consistency allows you to write really quick tools that manipulate your knowledge source. And you're going to be, I don't know if you saw me all morning, this morning on over the shoulder mode, I was like doing tons of that because I wanted to hurry and quickly reorganize the content and cut it out of this and that. So I'm just going to pause and make a case for that consistency. A similar, another consistency I make is I use the three. We haven't talked about Pandoc Lite Markdown, but all these callouts that you see, these are all using 3 colons. You can use an unlimited number of colons according to the Pandoc Lite specification, or and I don't. I specifically stick with 3. Okay, so what tricks? No, when you went from tricks to the, oh yeah. So here you go. So let's keep going. I just taken longer than I thought, but hopefully the commentary is not completely annoying. So FYI, here's my callouts. We'll talk about callouts during Pandoc Lite. Block quotes. I used to use block quotes for everything, and then I stopped. Because why? Because they're so annoying. You have to put a greater than sign in front of every single line. So this is how you do it. By the way, here is an example of one that actually appears. This is how you would do multiple lines. But you can already tell how annoying this gets when you try to edit this thing, right? So unless you have really good wrapping set up and everything and like that, even then it breaks because it's Markdown. It's not smart enough to know that you want to do automatic line continuation, blah, blah, blah. So I got to tell you, I save block quotes for block quotes. I used to use them for all these callouts that you're seeing in here. I used to use block quotes for all of that. And I would put a little emoji in front of here. I used to call them contextual quotes, block quotes. Oh, stupid. It's like Ryan Dahl says in 10 Things He Hates About Node. You know, he's the creator of Node. You know that cute thing that you think you want to add, that cute feature that you think is a good idea? Don't do it. That's his exact words. It's like he was commenting to all of the programmers out there saying, next time you think there's a cute little thing there that you know, might be, just don't. Anything you think is cute, just don't do it. And that was one of the things that I did that I thought was cute. So just stick with the boring stuff, right? And so yeah. So up here, we have the you know, that's where, block quotes. I don't use a block quote unless it's actually a quote. Almost all of the quotes I have are 1-line paragraphs, so they don't even have a second line. And for that kind of thing, that is nice because you have an additional format. It does render in HTML as a block quote. And, you know, allows you to, if you have a quotations index in advanced Pandoc, it'll create a nice little index of all your quotes and all that stuff. So that is block quotations. Tables. Okay, I had to make a mention of tables here because so many people abuse tables. So the first thing you need to know about tables is they are not a part of the original Markdown standard and never were. They were never intended to be a part of the standard. GitHub added them. The problem is GitHub added horrible tables. They borrowed from other languages and other Markdown formats that shall remain unnamed, and they decided to add tables. These disgustingly ugly tables. If you want the full rant on tables, please see my video to come called Pandoc Lite, where I'll talk about the different table formats and I will show you the one true table format, which is this. This is a table. That is a table. And if you, see the tables that Vera is showing you, if you do that, fine. I think that is absolutely stupid. I will never maintain that. I maintain hundreds of tables and documentation. And if I had to go through that every time I had to make a change in the table, I would shoot myself in the head. I totally would. So thankfully for us, the great people, the academics who made Pandoc, because they actually write knowledge source, not because they're a coder or an engineer, because they actually use this shit, made the most wonderful table format ever known to man that is slightly this is the simplest form, but it has 3 forms. You can do full like line returns and all that stuff. But you don't need bars in front. It's all white space. It all lines up. It's easier to read in source code, and it's easier to read as you as it's implemented. Let me just say, again, ahead of myself, this is a Pandoc table conversation, but it's if you want to have a good time, go read the thread about how when tables got proposed for the Common Mark standard. Tables are not Common Mark. They are not supported by Common Mark. You know why? Because they couldn't agree on what to be included. And there's no direct evidence of this, but JGM, I think, pretty much stuck his foot in the sand, down and said, no tables. These tables, GitHub made disastrously bad tables. He didn't say so, but I I would bet money that he felt like my tables are better. We're just going to say punt on this, and we're not even going to include tables in the standard. And then he went quietly along and supported their version of tables, their horrible version of tables, and then his glorious, beautiful, wonderful version of tables. And both of them are in Pandoc. So I will cover that in Pandoc Lite when we talk about that. And you can go through that. So if you're sticking with Pandoc, you're great. The only reason anybody might want tables is if they wanted their table to appear on GitHub. That's it. And if you're willing to sacrifice sustainability and easy to use managed tables, just so that they render properly in the default README editor of GitHub, instead of, I don't know, rendering it as a web page or a PDF instead, fine. But that is the only case that I can see where you would ever want to do tables. It's been about an hour and I am done. So why not GitHub tables? I just ranted about that right there. Can I use HTML in my Markdown? I ranted about that already. The answer is yes, but you shouldn't unless you really have. What about table of contents? TOCs are supported in Pandoc. They are not a part of the Markdown standard, nor should you use them since they're not compatible across the board. Well, again, this is supposed to be a conversation about basic Markdown. In fact, I'm going to go through and I'm going to recap really quick. It says, should I use reference links at the bottom? No. If you know... let's see, what about underscores? Don't use them. Can I use HTTP for links? Don't use that because you can't be aware to get that. Reference links. I do need to add one rant that I missed. Reference links are when you do a link. Again, this is something you should not do for reasons I'll describe. I used to be a seriously huge fan of reference links, and because it made it so pretty. But it's not a good idea. All right, so let me take this and change it into a reference link. So a reference link would be like this. I would have, it's good that you know about them though. So I would say external sites, right? And then I would have this here. And then I would put this HTTP here. And oops, got a little bit more than I wanted. There you go. And then up here, I just delete this, okay? So that is supported in some renderers and some it's not. This is supported by all standard Markdown renders. Everyone from the very beginning. This is supported, right? That saves you a little bit of typing. It's really stupid though, because why? Because you don't care about this down here. By the way, most of the time, this little line 128 here that I got here is at the bottom of the page. And I know even if your documents are small, which they should be, you could be like, 300 lines or 200 lines down and you've got this reference link. Then what happens? You got this line, you go copy this thing, put it into another page. Where's your link? Nowhere to be found. You can't find a link. So the reason people complain about this, the reason people really complain about this is because they don't like that they have these links in here. And so a couple things here. One of them is don't link to big long links. Find a tiny link if you need it, if you're really that overwhelmed with it. The second thing is all modern editors have some way to hide this link from you so you can't see it. Now, my tool, my Pandoc Vim plugin actually does that, but I've disabled it on purpose because I want to see what things are being linked to. I want to check the accuracy of my links as I go, including the big, long, hairy ones. And because the big, long, hairy ones are just another bit of text inside of a big, long paragraph, I don't care. Does it remove the readability? Yes, somewhat removes the readability. I won't lie, but you can activate that so that that will go small for you and just show you that that is a link, and it will only show it when it's highlighted. If that's a real big problem, there's other editors out there, and we'll talk about editors later, but Typora is one of the many editors that will hide the link from you and allow you to keep the link in line. Do not use reference links if you care about editing your content for a very long time. You're going to eventually leave dangling ones, and then you're going to be searching through your whole document looking for it because you don't even know if you're still using it in that page because you copied it out a year ago, blah, blah, blah. Just keep them together. Don't separate them, and you will be a happy person. That's all I have for Basic Markdown Boost. I'm going to go into casual mode and talk to you guys a little bit about it. And I'll keep that on the stream. Just know you're still on the video if you guys want to talk. But if you have any specific questions, otherwise, all the rest of this will be covered in two other videos. There will be one other video to talk about all of the markdowns in general, and how they relate. I talked about it a lot in this video, but I'll be just talking about that and why to use Markdown over all the others. I'll be making that case. I'm going to talk about that's actually in something called knowledge as source. That's that video. Another video I'll be doing is Markdown editors. And all it talks about is editors and plugins and what's the best one for Emacs and what's the best one for this and what's the best one for, VS Code and all that stuff. That doesn't belong in this video. And the third one will be, I'll be doing a specific video about Pandoc Lite. And that's it. I'm not going to be I've seriously been tempted to do a video about, I've been seriously tempted to do a video about all of Pandoc, and after having done one recently in one of our videos here, I've decided no, I'm just going to focus on the best parts of Pandoc that I think will sustain you for a very, very long time. I actually think they have a really good shot at making it into the Common Mark standard based on how ubiquitous they are already in Pandoc. There's a lot of edge cases that you can, little things over the years that have accrued in Pandoc that I think you should still avoid, even though you can use them. They're cool, namely bibliographies, reference links, definition lists, all this stuff. So I won't be talking about that. So the 3 videos that come, knowledge as source, editors, Markdown editors specifically, and Pandoc Lite Markdown, which is my word, Pandoc Lite. Less filling. All right, somebody asked for an order.